Hi guys.
Hi.
So like now that we feel like we can kind of breathe again, I think we wanted to tell everyone like exactly what happened, but like my fingers are raw from typing, so we're just gonna tell you like this. My arm's gonna get sore. Okay, so so what happened? I know everyone's kind of like wondering because like we were just at home and everything was fine, and then bam, we're gone, and you guys are seeing some crazy posts. So Monday when me and my dad came down, Tom wasn't with us because Tom works, and this was actually just supposed to be a standard checkup. So they were going to put Elijah to sleep and do an echo, which is just like an ultrasound of his heart, and get some good pictures.
Yeah.
Make sure that everything was good to go. So when we got here, they did all the standard stuff. They weighed him, they measured his length, they whatever. And then they came over to hook him up to the monitors because they were going to give him the medicine by mouth to put him to sleep. So they put the monitor on him, and his oxygen level was 55, which is really low. Like it's like you're almost already gone. So they wouldn't let us move from the room where we were supposed to have the ultrasound done. And everyone was just kind of like running around, rushing around us. They went and got my cardiologist, and well, Elijah's cardiologist, and brought him over to see us, and he didn't know what was going on. So he said, feed him now, because we thought maybe it was partially the dehydration. When you don't drink a lot, less blood in the tank, and Elijah has clots, so that's not good. So they let us drink. He got a little bit more stable, so they moved us to 4D. His heart rate dropped, or his oxygen dropped again. They were giving him oxygen, which they were giving him 10. That's like they were giving him 10 liters of oxygen with a box over his head. So so really breathing it in like room air. And then he also had the prongs in his nose, so his oxygen levels should have been fine. Like that's a lot of oxygen. That would do damage to our lungs. It'd be so much, but he still wasn't getting enough. He was really drawing in when he was breathing. You could see this was sinking in and under his thing, so it really wasn't good. So they moved us to the ICU. It's a kids, they call it. They have a bunch, right? Because this is where the most complex kids come. So we're actually in the CCU, cardiac critical care unit. So we're with all heart babies and heart specialists, heart doctors, CVS, so cardiovascular surgeons come in all the time. So it's a really good place to be. So they came down, and then they decided that they did a CT, and they could kind of see that the stents weren't working like they were supposed to. So they weren't sure if they were collapsing, or if it was clots. We knew this was coming. We knew Elijah was going to outgrow his stents, but there was supposed to be some like warning signs. It wasn't supposed to go from like being fine to
0 to 60.
Yeah. So they told me that they were going to take him into the cath lab. I was comfortable with that because we went to the cath lab before. There was no complications. The cath lab is really, I mean...
It's like laparoscopic versus going in and cutting open.
Yeah, like as a parent, if you're watching this, like I know the cath lab might seem terrifying, but like from our standpoint, like it's really, really low risk. So they sent him up to the cath lab, and they had me, I'm okay. They had me sitting there, and they said it would take about 3 hours. So I said, okay. So we went and got something to eat, kind of just hanging out, waiting to hear how it was going. The plan was to put in a catheter and then put in a balloon and dilate his stents, because the stents that they put in, they're like a mesh, kind of like they kind of look like a metal version of those Chinese finger traps, and they can put the wire in and then balloon them out. So they were going to make them a little bit bigger because the stents they put in him were expandable. That was always the plan, but they didn't want to make them too big when they first put them in. I know somebody was asking me why didn't they just make them big in the first place, almost like they were thinking that maybe sick kids had done something, but they didn't. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. They put in the size stent they were supposed to, and then the plan is they can go in and expand them because the metal will stretch. And it's inside his artery, so it's not like if they stretch the metal, you know, like he's bleeding out this mess. It's in the artery, so he still has his vein. It's just holding his vein. It's holding his vein open. It's like if you were to like... I don't know, stick a straw inside a balloon, you could blow up the thing. So that was the plan. So they went in and they started to do it, and they were ballooning, and he started to throw clots, like bad. He was clotting really, really bad. So then they had to go out, and then they had to go back in, and one of the wires, and this is an unheard of complication, one of the wires that they were using got stuck. So he was stuck in cath lab. They couldn't get the wire out. So that's when they called in a surgeon He was with surgeons, but they called in more surgeons to support. And I guess this is when they put him on ECMO, which is like a bypass.
It's a pulmonary bypass.
Pretty much,
it works like using your heart and lungs together, and it filters the carbon dioxide out of your blood and oxygenates it using a bunch of bags, filters, and pumps.
Yeah. So from like a heart baby standpoint, this is our version of life support. So I'm standing down in the waiting room with my dad, hanging out, we're joking around, we're talking to the other families, whatever, and then I see my cardiologist coming down, and I smile at him, and I give him a little wave, like, hi, we're here, this isn't what we planned, but it's all good, and his face dropped, and I thought, oh, okay, and then he came up to me, and he said Elijah's on ECMO, so that's life support, so I was like, okay, so then they went back up, and at this point, it had been 4 hours, so then they told me to call Elijah's dad and get him down here, which is never good, because if they're calling in the family, I mean, we all know what that means, so.
And that's where I'm at the Collins Hall, and the wonderful Sandy Finnemore and Darla show up, and they pull me from work and say it's time to go, and it's where Corey Bricknell and Natalie Bray did the most amazing thing ever, because if you follow my Facebook, you'll know that 2 weeks ago my bearings started to go, and we're making sure we do that properly, and there wasn't a way that I could get down, and Darla was stressed and emotional, so they drove us. They put that out there for us, and that's something I'm still shocked about. It's so amazing. I've never had somebody reach out like that.
So they brought, I had to wait another couple of hours before I heard anything. And the scary thing about that is sometimes, they don't particularly keep kids on ECMO, just cause it's a lot. And like Elijah had a lot of doctors bedside for it. So they don't keep them on ECMO unless they think they're going to be able to come off it. But it normally takes a couple tries. But, so like I didn't know what was going on. So, I was that parent in the waiting room screaming and kicking walls, and it is what it is. But then they brought, they told me that he was going down to the rooms. They brought me in to see him. I think you guys saw pictures. So he had these big tubes in his arteries. I posted pictures online, and he couldn't move. He was sedated. He was medically paralyzed. So he had a machine breathing for him. Yeah, so
those are the tubes.
Yeah. So that was my baby, and that sucked to walk into. So I kind of just asked them if I could just have a chair, and I promised them that I wouldn't touch anything or move anything, but could I just sit beside him and hold his hand? So that's pretty much what we did. The next day they came in and they were going to do a clamp trial. So a clamp trial is where those big tubes coming out of his neck, they
put a clamp like that one on the canyon.
Sorry guys, we moved someone into the private room a little more. So anyways, so they put a clamp on those wires right there, and it's scary to go through, because there's kind of like everyone's just like standing by. They don't really expect you to expect them to come off. They don't expect it to go well.
There is no expectation, because if it's your child's first time, it's new, right? So
anyway, so yeah, so they did the clamp test, and when they do that, they say clamping, and then they take it off and they say flashing. And what they do is they were watching Elijah's stats to see how he was doing, breathing on his own, oxygenating his own lungs. So we did that for an hour. When they told me they were going to do the clamp test, the doctor came in and he was talking to me, and he said, we're going to try him to do the clamp test. He's like, but please don't panic if he doesn't come off. Don't expect him to come off. They don't come off on the first time, so don't be surprised. Lots of kids go a few days on ECMO. For now he's stable, and yada yada yada. And I looked at him and I said, okay, but don't be surprised if he proves you wrong. And the doctor was like, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. So they did the clamp test for an hour, and then they came in and they sat down with us, and that's always scary, because they come and sit down with you, and you're like,
you have a lot of people.
They're really good at hiding their emotions, so like I mean, you don't really know if you're going to be getting a good response or a bad response. I mean, our cardiologist, Dr. Fraser Golding, when he was coming down to see me, I knew something was wrong because he like was teary-eyed. But I mean, most of the doctors are pretty good at, you know, just staying level, because if they start to get emotional, we're going to get more emotional. So then they told us that they were actually coming and they were going to take him off ECMO, which is a long procedure. It's a surgery, and it's very, very risky because it's not the same as the clamp test. When they do the clamp test, they're taking the ECMO down to like, it's working like 10%, but it's still working. They can't clamp those lines perfectly closed because, like, if you think about it, if you close something like a Band-Aid, well, that's you coagulate, right? You form a scab, which is pretty much like an external blood clot. You want your blood to clot when you're bleeding. Elijah's clots were his problem.
Yep.
So when you have him on ECMO and then they say they're going to go do the clotting, they have to limit the blood thinners because they're going to be pulling something out of his arteries. His arteries are open, so everyone knows, you know, it's a sliced carotid artery. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that that's not good. So, you know, there's like very, 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 very high risk of bleeding. So they have to limit your blood thinners.
And what they're doing is they're trying to get the human body back to being used to that diffusion of oxygen over the respiratory surfaces, right? They clamp it and they let you have your own blood back and run your own system on its own so that your body gets used to not being on the ECMO and the drugs and whatnot.
So the doctor came in and saw me. He kind of explained the risks, and then he said to us, like, the only true way, there is no true test. The only true way to know if a kid can come off ECMO is to take them off ECMO. So they took him into the surgery room. We paced the hallways. I'm pretty sure after last time we sent him in for a routine procedure that there's definitely some like post-traumatic stress disorder going on, and that's okay. I'll forgive myself. But so they took him in for the surgery, and we kind of just waited. We didn't know. Scariest moment of our lives. And then they came in, and then my phone rang, and I answered it really fast, and they said, he's okay. He's off ECMO. You need to give us some time to get him cleaned up, and then you can come see him. So we came in and we saw him, and he was off ECMO. He was still sedated. Clean him up. They had to there's a lot of blood when his artery is cut. So then they had to give him blood transfusions, quite a few. So that's okay. It's actually pretty normal. And then they stopped giving him whole transfusions, and they went to giving him just platelets.
Yeah.
And then they went to giving him just plasma, and then they went to giving him red blood cells, because sometimes it's easier if you break the blood down and give the components of blood on their own, which is something they used to not be able to do. So the risks of transfusion actually aren't as bad as they used to be. Yeah. What are you pulling up?
This is the first moment that you guys saw each other.
Mm-hmm. So then they let me hold Elijah. So just a second.
So this is the video of Jesse and Elijah for the first time seeing each other. How was the first moment off the ECMO?
Yeah, so there's a song, it's like that, we belong to the night, we belong
to each other.
Yeah, and it's like we belong together. So, okay, so I didn't get to cut Elijah, so they were coming in to do rounds. Normally they kick you out, but if you're having like a really personal moment, or maybe if your child's not doing too well, they don't make you leave, but you have to put on these noise-reducing headphones.
Hold on.
So they're...
Hold on. You can't really see them, but that's Jesse's noise-reducing headphones.
Yeah. So they're like, it's like those like big things from the 80s with big headphones they put on, and it's actually playing the radio. Yeah. So the first time I get to hold Elijah after, like, he basically went, 90% of the way the other way, then someone turned him around and told him Mommy's not done with him yet, and Daddy's not done with him yet. He's got big things to do. That's what was on the radio. So like, how ironic is that? So I sat there and
starting to hate the radio.
Held my baby and bawled my eyes out. And I don't know who went. So he's okay now. He's off ECMO. He's awake. He's off. his medication, the sedation medication. I made them give him some Tylenol because it's quite obvious his throat's bugging him. They have to keep suctioning because there's a lot of secretion, but he's breathing on his own.
Yep.
His saturations are like 98.
Some of the nurses were actually surprised at how fast he came off the ECMO. The nurse we had last night was shocked that it was just bam, bam, and bam, and he was where he is now.
Yeah, it's not by any means the norm. He's being fed through a feeding tube, which is, I mean, I've fought really hard for him not to have a feeding tube. He'll be okay. He's not going to be on it forever. We will do everything we have to do to get him off of it, but his throat's really sore. I mean, he had a breathing tube in, so like,
yeah, of course.
I'll forgive him. But he has an NG tube, so if you see pictures of him, there's a little heart on his cheek and a tube in his nose. It's putting food into his belly. It's really cute when they do it. He's really confused, so they're putting the food into his belly and he kind of just lays there and looks back and forth and he doesn't know what's going on and he moves his lips a lot, so we have to give him a soother, so we're kind of like trying to trick him into thinking he's actually eating. But that's okay. We were supposed to move up to 4D, maybe now we're not. Biggest concern right now is some clots. He's on a lot of blood thinners, so we have to be really, really careful with him. And I guess Monday he's going up for surgical discussion, so I'm not sure what they're gonna do. I'm hoping they just keep us here, maybe at the hospital, or maybe discharge us to the Ronald McDonald House so that we can, they can keep a closer eye on him, because now we know like his stents, maybe they're not the best option for him. So he probably will be having his open heart surgery. But he's really good right now, so I'm hoping that they just, you know, keep us close where they can watch him and give him any medication he needs to stay stable, so that we can get him bigger before we do the surgery, and they can do all the imaging that they need to do before they do it, because his heart isn't like your heart or my heart or Tom's heart or your grandma's heart or probably anyone you ever met's heart. It's pretty
it looks like a pretty big butterfly.
Yeah, barely resembles human is what they used. Yeah. So that's where we're at, and I don't know if there's any more updates. So my inbox has been blown up with people I don't even really ever talk to. The phone's been going off the hook. People have been all over our page. People in Elliott Lake are wearing red, which I think is totally awesome.
Yeah.
So like, just know that we hear you, we love you, we appreciate you. We're probably not going to be home for a while. Tom might go back and do some work, and I might stay here. And we haven't figured anything out yet. We'll let you guys know. But I don't think we're coming home for a while. I think Toronto is where we need to be right now. So just, you know, we're prepared. We're gonna buckle up and saddle up and do whatever Elijah needs to do.
That's right.
He's good. He is a total rock star. He's the strongest person that I know. Like, he's been through more than
all of us combined.
I'll post a picture after this video of Elijah's bravery beads, but I have some more to put on. But we came down here and he had 98 beads. So he gets a bead for every poke, every procedure, every surgery, everything that's invasive, anything that could hurt him. And it's kind of sad to think of, but he's surpassed 500. When I'm walking around the hospital and I've got his bravery beads kind of like draped over my neck because he has too much stuff on his IVs right now to hang them in his room, they would just be getting in the way. But people are looking at me like, oh my God, like, just because the parents here know what they mean. So it's crazy, but he's good, we're good, my mom and dad are good, so yeah,
as good as it gets.
Yeah, well, just keep on trekking. So keep praying, keep throwing out those good vibes, keep thinking of Elijah, keep wearing red. Yeah, and yeah, just know that we love you all so much, and Elijah definitely feels it. So just keep on doing you, and we'll keep on doing us. Okay, bye guys.